Behind the elegant facade of this historic mansion lies a story so horrifying, it has haunted New Orleans for nearly 2 centuries. Madame Dalphine Lalaurie, a wealthy socialite, was once admired for her charm and sophistication. But beneath the surface, she hid a dark and twisted secret, a legacy of unimaginable cruelty that shocked the world. What really happened inside the walls of the Lalaurie mansion? And how did this woman escape justice for her unspeakable crimes? Join us as we uncover the chilling truth behind one of America's most infamous figures. Madame Dalphine Lalaurie, born Marie Delphine McCarthy, was a prominent New Orleans socialite whose life took a dark and infamous turn. Here's a detailed account of her life. Dalphine Lalaurie was born on March 19, 1787, in New Orleans, Louisiana, which was then under Spanish colonial rule. She came from a wealthy and influential Creole family. Her father, Louis Barthélemy McCarty, and her mother, Marie-Jean Larrable, were prominent figures in New Orleans society. Her family owned a vast plantation, and her upbringing was marked by privilege and luxury. Delphine's family connections extended into politics. Her uncle served as the governor of 2 Spanish-American provinces, and her cousin later became the mayor of New Orleans. This background placed her firmly within the elite social circles of the city. Delphine married 3 times, each union shaping her life in different ways. In 1800, at the age of 14, Delphine married 35-year-old Don Ramon de López y Angulo, a high-ranking officer in the Spanish Royal Army. Their marriage was short-lived, as Don Ramon tragically died in a shipwreck off the coast of Cuba in 1804. At the time of his death, Delphine was pregnant with their child. In 1808, at the age of 20, Delphine married her second husband, 50-year-old Jean-Paul Blanc, a wealthy banker. The couple had 4 children together. However, this marriage also ended in tragedy when Jean-Paul passed away in 1816, leaving Delphine widowed for the second time. His death left her in financial difficulties, which were later alleviated by an inheritance from her father. In 1825, 38-year-old Delphine married her third husband, Dr. Leonard Louis Nicolas Lalaurie, a French chiropractor who was in his early 20s. This union resulted in 1 child. Their marriage was reportedly tumultuous, with frequent separations and reconciliations. Despite this, they purchased and completed the infamous mansion at 1140 Royal Street in New Orleans. This marriage is most closely associated with the dark events that later unfolded in her life. Delphine's personality was a complex and chilling contradiction. Publicly, she was known as a charming and sophisticated socialite in 19th-century New Orleans. She hosted lavish parties and maintained an image of grace and generosity, even freeing 2 enslaved individuals at one point to bolster her reputation. However, accounts suggest she was manipulative, cruel, and deeply sadistic. Her treatment of enslaved individuals was not only inhumane, but shockingly brutal. Her socialite status masked the horrific reality of her private life. Before diving into her brutal acts against her slaves, let's talk about what it was like to be a slave in New Orleans in the 19th century. New Orleans in the 19th century was the epicenter of the U.S. slave trade, with over 135,000 enslaved individuals sold there. The city's bustling economy relied heavily on their labor, particularly in sugar and cotton industries. However, their treatment was often brutal and dehumanizing. Enslaved people were subjected to physical punishment, harsh working conditions, and the constant threat of being separated from their families through sale. Public auctions were common, where individuals were treated as property and stripped of their dignity. Even in domestic roles, they faced abuse, as seen in the horrific case of Delphine, whose cruelty shocked even a society accustomed to the inhumanity of slavery. Here's a detailed look at the rumors and confirmed atrocities. Delphine maintained a facade of kindness and generosity in public. She freed 2 enslaved individuals, likely to bolster her reputation as a benevolent mistress. However, neighbors often noticed the emaciated and wretched appearances of those enslaved in her household, sparking rumors of mistreatment. One of the most infamous incidents involved a 12-year-old enslaved girl named Leah. While brushing Delphine's hair, Leah accidentally pulled too hard, enraging Delphine. In a fit of fury, Delphine chased the terrified girl with a whip, leading her to climb onto the roof. Tragically, Leah fell to her death. Witnesses reported that Delphine attempted to cover up the incident by disposing of Leah's body in a well. Authorities investigated and found her guilty of illegal cruelty, forcing her to forfeit 9 enslaved individuals. However, Delphine circumvented this punishment by having friends and family repurchase them and return them to her. The exact number of Delphine's victims remain unclear, but some accounts suggest that the number of people who suffered and died due to her cruelty could be as high as 100. The fire at Delphine's mansion on April 10, 1834, revealed the horrifying extent of her cruelty. Here's a detailed account of what happened. The blaze began in the kitchen, where a 70-year-old enslaved cook was found chained to the stove. She later admitted to starting the fire deliberately. Some accounts suggest she intended to end her life, while others believe she hoped to expose the abuse happening in the mansion. The fire quickly spread, drawing neighbors and volunteers to the scene. When rescuers arrived, they found Delphine and her family fleeing the mansion, attempting to save their valuables. However, they refused to provide keys to the enslaved quarters, prompting the volunteers to break down the doors. In the attic, rescuers discovered a scene of unimaginable brutality. Enslaved individuals were found in various states of mutilation and suffering. 7 enslaved people were reportedly suspended by their necks, with their limbs stretched and torn. Some had their limbs broken and reset in grotesque positions, resembling crabs. Others had their mouths sewn shut or their eyes gouged out. One victim had holes drilled into their skull, with wooden spoons nearby, allegedly used to stir their brains. Bodies of deceased individuals were left to decompose alongside those barely clinging to life. These enslaved individuals had been confined for months, subjected to systematic torture designed to prolong their suffering. The conditions were so appalling that even in a society accustomed to the brutalities of slavery, the discoveries shocked the public. The horrifying discovery of tortured enslaved individuals in the attic enraged the citizens of New Orleans, who had already been suspicious of Delphine's treatment of her enslaved workers. As news of the atrocities spread, a large crowd gathered outside the mansion. The sight of the rescued enslaved individuals, many of whom were mutilated and barely alive, fueled their anger. The mob stormed the mansion, smashing windows, doors, and furniture. They tore apart the interior, leaving the once elegant home in ruins. Only the walls of the mansion remained standing after the mob's rampage. The destruction was not just an act of anger, but a symbolic rejection of the cruelty and inhumanity that had taken place within the mansion's walls. As the mob destroyed her mansion, Delphine managed to slip away in her carriage. She reportedly fled to Lake Pontchartrain, where she boarded a schooner bound for France. Her escape was carefully orchestrated, allowing her to evade capture and prosecution. In June 1834, an American poet claimed to have encountered Delphine aboard a vessel sailing to France. He described her as a pretty-looking French woman and noted that she openly admitted to the atrocities committed at her mansion. Despite her confessions, she successfully reached Paris, where she sought refuge. She reportedly lived there with her children and husband, Dr. Leonard Louis Nicholas Lalaurie. Accounts suggest that she maintained a relatively low profile, avoiding public scrutiny. It is widely believed that she died in Paris on December 7, 1849, at the age of 62. Some accounts claim that her body was later exhumed and returned to New Orleans. An epitaph plate bearing her name was allegedly discovered at St. Louis Cemetery, fueling speculation that she may have been buried in her hometown. Other stories suggest that she may have died earlier, possibly in 1842 or under different circumstances. One particularly bizarre rumor claims she was killed in a hunting accident involving a wild boar, though this lacks credible evidence. Here's a detailed account of what happened to the mansion and its haunted reputation. Over the years, the mansion was rebuilt and repurposed multiple times. It served as a school, a music conservatory, a shelter for the homeless, and even apartments. Despite its transformations, its dark history continued to overshadow its new roles. The mansion is widely regarded as one of the most haunted houses in America. Many believe that the spirits of the enslaved individuals who suffered and died there still linger within its walls. Here are some of the reported paranormal phenomena. Visitors and residents have reported hearing shrieks, moans, and the dragging of chains. Sightings of ghostly figures, including a large man in chains and a white woman with glaring eyes, have been reported. People have experienced cold spots, sudden feelings of dread, and objects moving on their own. When the mansion was used as a school, young girls claimed to have been grabbed and scratched by an unseen force, believed to be the spirit of Madame Lalaurie herself. The mansion has changed hands numerous times, with many owners unable to stay for long due to its eerie atmosphere. In 2007, actor Nicolas Cage briefly owned the property but lost it to foreclosure in 2009. Today, the mansion is privately owned and not open to the public, though it remains a popular stop on ghost tours in New Orleans. Dalphine's story has inspired numerous books, films, and TV shows, including her portrayal by Kathy Bates in American Horror Story, Coven. These adaptations often blend fact and fiction, further cementing her place in popular culture. Her life serves as a grim reminder of the horrors of slavery and the capacity for human cruelty, sparking discussions about justice, morality, and historical accountability. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, subscribe and hit the bell icon for more true crime stories.